Howdy and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about how to give enemies the ability to shoot at the player. And so we're going to be working on giving them weapons and then giving them those weapons some type of projectile. So here I've already added in two sprites. Sprite for ray gun, keeping with my space theme that I've got so far. This is a ray gun. And then if I scroll down, I also have sprite ray. And so as you can see, it uses the same muzzle flash first frame with slightly different color scheme. And then this is what I've made for my bullet. I also modified the hitbox for it. And just focusing on that side. But otherwise, that covers the two sprites. Our first thing that we're going to want to do, of course, is work on adding our two objects. So let's go ahead and create a new object. This will be the weapon. And so this will be obj underscore enemy gun is what I'm going to call it. I'm going to remember to select the sprite. So I've called it ray gun. There we go. Now that I've got that, let's go ahead and add a create event. And this just initialize. Now let me increase the size of it for y'all. There we go. So in our enemy gun, initialize. Our countdown rate is set to 40, and the countdown at the moment is going to be equal to whatever the countdown rate starts at. So this means that we'll have 40 frames. The goal of this variable is to represent that we have 40 frames until the enemy will fire again. So if we're running at 60 frames per second, they'll roughly shoot a little under 2 shots per second. Then we have a begin step phase. Let's see, begin step. Following the model that we had from before. And so ray gun. So our current X value is going to be whatever our owner's X value is. Our current Y value is going to be whatever our owner's Y value is. Plus 10, just to shift it around. You can tweak that number to get it nice and perfect, but I found 10 works best for my sprites. Our image X scale is going to match X scale is going to be equal to the absolute value of our owner's image underscore X scale. And the image underscore Y scale is going to be equal to the absolute value of the owner's image underscore Y scale. So that way we get the exact value of whatever it is, so we're on the correct size. Then, if the instance exists of the player, then we can try to aim at them. If obj underscore players X value is less than our X value, well, we will have the image Y scale equal to negative image Y scale. That just flips it. So that'll represent the ray gun flipping correctly as it goes past the midpoint. So that way it looks correct and it is right up when aiming at the player. Then here's where we put a decent chunk of code. Do note it will complain about owner because we have not used that yet. We'll tie that in whenever the enemy gets the gun. But here, if the distance between the points of the obj underscore player X value and obj underscore player Y value and our current X and Y value is less than 6 100 pixels. You will modify that based off of your scale. I know some of y'all are using much larger models, so you will need to increase that number. Some of y'all are using smaller models, so you'll decrease that number, whatever you think is appropriate for your game. Let me actually maximize this. And so inside here, we're going to have a decent chunk of the code. The image angle is equal to point direction x, y, obj underscore player dot x, obj underscore player dot y. So that will correctly get the image to get our sprite to be the correct direction. So it is now aiming at the player if the player is within 600 pixels. Then count down minus minus. If the countdown is less than or equal to 0 and the collision line, can they actually see the player between the ray gun and the player? If anywhere from this line we interact with the wall, and false, false for those other two parameters. This one is actually a long condition check. So if our countdown is less than or equal to 0, and between us and the player there are no walls, that's where the not operator comes in. We check to see, is there a wall between us? If there's not a wall between us, then we can safely go through and begin shooting. Now, collision checks are always an expensive operation, but because of how short circuit evaluation works, the left side of the AND operator is evaluated first. If this turns out to be false, it does not evaluate the second half of it. So we can save ourselves some worry about this other cost. It's only going to happen every 40 frames rather than every single frame. So just under twice a second will we be checking, can they actually shoot? So that gives us some comfort in knowing that this portion is not going to slow down our game. Then countdown is equal to countdown rate. Then here we have the code that creates our bullets. So with instance underscore create underscore layer, we're going to create X, Y, and I'm going to put this in the bullets layer. But this is actually going to create obj underscore enemy bullet, which we have not created yet, but we will cover in a bit. Our speed is 5. Our direction is equal to other image angle plus random range, -3 to +3. And the image underscore angle is simply equal to the direction. And so now that we've got that, we now have our clear view of comparing to confirm that we are within range, reducing our countdown. If our countdown has hit 0 and there is no collision, then we can safely go ahead and try to shoot by creating a enemy bullet, which is the little rays that I've created. That's actually all we need to do inside the enemy gun object. So let's go ahead and jump into the enemy so that way they can have a gun. So in our create event, we're going to add a little chunk of code. If they have a gun, has gun, then my gun is equal to instance underscore create underscore layer X, Y, in the weapons, right? It is weapons with an S. Let me go to the correct room. Weapon, no S. In the weapon layer, obj underscore enemy gun. With my gun. The owner is equal to other ID, the person in question, the enemy. If we don't have a gun, then my gun is equal to no one. This makes sure that later on, whenever we check for some operations with gun, it doesn't freak out because it doesn't exist. But this variable has gun. We need to make sure we actually create it over here under variable definitions. Add has gun, because not necessarily do all of the enemies need to have a gun. I'm going to leave it off by default. I actually don't want all my enemies to have a gun. Maybe you do. Maybe you can set this to true by default, and then they all start with guns, and then you manually select some of them to not have them. Again, your game, your design, it is up to you. Now that we have that, the next part is to make sure that we can clean this up. Whenever the enemy dies, right before they destroy themselves with my gun, make sure they destroy the gun instance or destroy. That way we don't worry about them shooting us after being dead. Their gun will destroy itself. And just to add a little effect, I'm going to create a small little dust or make dust and add in the amount of just 10 little dust bits and true, it'll go in both directions. That way it kind of poofs out of existence. And so now the enemy has the gun exists. The only thing that we don't have right now is the actual enemy bullet. So I'm actually going to duplicate our current bullet and add that in, since there is quite a bit that overlaps. So I'm going to duplicate obj bullet and this is going to be enemy bullet. Let's go look at enemy bullet here. Okay, I'm gonna let my enemy shoot through the barricades. They are not going to damage the enemies. Stop at second frame. Okay, that one's good. Post draw event. What happens whenever they hit the wall? I'm not going to have them turn into a hit spark. I'm actually just going to have them do make dust. That will be my impact. Make dust, and I'll just take 15. And I don't think I need anything else fancy. True and true. And then, of course, instance underscore destroy the ray as it comes flying through. Oh, yes. And most importantly, update this. We're not going to be using the bullet sprite. I made the ray sprite. So in our post draw event, whenever we collide into a wall, I just have a little dust cloud pop in. Now, here's the part. collisions with the enemy. We don't collide with the enemy, we collide with the player. And so with this section, I'm actually going to, I want to keep all the collisions only on the player side. Since whenever we run into someone else, I'd rather just the player be checking every frame. Did they run into stuff? Then potentially all these many bullets checking every single time for running into the player. So I'm going to copy this event, delete this. The bullet just exists, it flies, it might hit something, might not. It just does its job. But over in the player, OBJ, where is player? There we go. Nope. I'm going to add a collision with the enemy bullet. Hit by bullet. And so what we're going to do here, right now this is not going to be complete because in a later video I'm going to address actually damaging the player. But I want to have my player have a screen shake. Screen shake and 1020 whenever we get hit. Just so we can see that that has happened. And then with the other being the bullet, or the ray, instance underscore destroy. So that way the bullet destroys itself. But this is just going to be the placeholder right now until we actually address actually getting hit. So with this down, assuming I typed everything correctly, we should be good to test it. There's nothing we need to drop into the room. Oh, wait, no, it does need to be. One thing needs to be modified, at least one thing. We need to actually tell them that they are allowed to have guns. So I need to go to the enemy layer and select, oh, this is not supposed to be in here. This needs to be moved to a different layer, but let's see. Get that barricaded for the moment. This enemy, I'm going to give them variable and they have a gun. This enemy also variable and they get a gun. And then sure, this enemy variable also receives a ray gun. Now, whenever I run this, we should be able to see that we have a couple of enemies with guns. Now, where did I make a mistake? Somewhere in this code, in the begin step of our enemy gun. See, this matches where, oh, I think I missed a bracket. That closes off that one. This closes off the if statement, and this one closes off that one. Okay, my bad. I was missing one close bracket. Save that, and let's see. All right, jumping into the testing room. All right, as you can see that they are shooting at me. And you see whenever it hits the wall, it turns into a little dust cloud. And let's see, they hit me. Yes, you can see that it's starting to shake, so it's recognizing that it's hitting me. We currently don't have any repercussions right now of actually damaging the player, resulting in their death. That's something for another video, but we do now have the enemy shooting at us. As you can see, the little ray gun, as I jump around, it kind of tries to look at me. So I did slow down the enemy shots. The code has it set for 5. If you think this is too fast, you can slow it down further. It depends on, again, how you want to design the game. If you wanted to make a bullet hell type game where tons and tons of bullets are flying around and you're trying to dodge them, then go ahead. You can keep switch the variable to true so all of the enemies get a gun, but maybe slow down the bullets more so that way you can have more of an opportunity to dodge. Let's see if the deleting portion works. Okay, I need to get rid of him because he's getting annoying. Okay. And so we should, yes, we saw a little dust cloud occur whenever we shot the one that did have a gun. And if they don't have a gun, we shoot them. The code works fine because it sees that there's no gun. The my gun variable is no one. So it correctly addresses that and we don't have any errors caused. But that wraps up our video for today. We now have the ability for enemies to shoot back at us. And a nice little animation for them following the player, not shooting if they can't see the player. And then the little dust cloud that appears whenever they collide, and a dust cloud that appears whenever they die to represent the ray gun disappearing. But that's all we've got. If you have any questions or need any assistance, just let me know in class. Otherwise, all of y'all have a good one.